If you work with preschoolers or young elementary age students, today's episode is simply a cannot miss episode. And that's because we're going to talk about a skill that's rarely discussed, yet extremely important. And that skill is decontextualized language use. Now, when I'm talking about decontextualized language use, what I'm referring to is language that is not about the here and now. When you're having conversations and when you're having discussion about a past event or a future event or your ideas that you can't see, that it's not concrete, it's abstract. This is when it's decontextualized, it's out of context. This is an extremely important skill. There's been multiple studies happening over the last 20 years that have shown that preschoolers and early elementary students that have strong decontextualized language skills tend to have better outcomes academically and in literacy throughout the elementary age years. So decontextualized language is very important. Unfortunately, it's rarely covered in the content you're going to see on social media or across continuing education courses. And unfortunately, not only is it rarely covered, many speech pathologists don't address it because they've never been taught the strategies. Today, I'm going to show you 4 highly effective strategies. We're going to apply it to Halloween, the upcoming holiday. You can apply these strategies to any event. If you're going on a field trip, if you have a special event, if it's a birthday, anything that's coming up that's special, this is something you're going to want to pull out of your toolbox. This is a real game changer. Beyond the obvious, and that the longitudinal research indicates that children early in elementary school or preschool age that have great, stronger decontextualized language skills are going to have better academic outcomes and literacy outcomes throughout elementary age. Aside from that, which is huge, it's just, what does this type of decontextualized language offer? What it offers, first and foremost, is being able to discuss mental states, being able to discuss not only the child's perspective or the child's thoughts on what is occurring or their opinions, but also being able to take the perspectives of others. You're not talking about what is happening, you're talking about, the child's talking about what they think about it, what they hope, what they remember. So we're really talking about an abstract, this isn't what's happening, this is how I feel about it. So it's decontextualized. So not only does it help children and us understand others' perspective, but it also helps us understand our own mental state better, from what is actually occurring to how we feel about it, and that being something different, or what we wonder and what our thoughts are. Aside from that, it also improves executive function. If you're able to talk about the future, you're able to make a plan, you're able to take action, you're going to go through that plan and how you're going to see it through to the end. This multiple step planning of an event. What am I going to do first? Then what am I going to do? What am I going to do after that? And what am I going to do? You're planning it out from beginning to end. Language being the container of, as William Labov would say, it is, if you have those concepts of first, next, then, lastly, we're talking about the future, or we're talking about what we did in the past, then you're going to have better executive function skills, because language is a container of thought. It also gives us this inferential thinking ability in which we're able to say, if this were to happen, then this would happen. Once again, we're talking about the conditional future, this cause-effect thinking. This happened because of this. We're reflecting on something. That inferential thinking is once again developed by the language that you're using, by the if, then, because, so, these complex sentences, which are so important. Complex sentences will beat grammatical morphemes hands down any day of the week, because complex sentences is complex thinking. That is why we really care about decontextualized language development. Let's dive into the first strategy. I'm going to apply this in terms of Halloween. And what we want to do is we want to build anticipation about the conversations beforehand. And we want to use those mental state verbs about what we think is going to happen. So some examples that we see in the literature is, I think that this is going to happen. I hope this is going to happen. So maybe you're going to say, I hope that I get a lot of candy when I go trick-or-treating, or I hope that I get some toys when I go trick-or-treating. Or maybe you're going to say, I guess. What do you guess your brother's going to be for Halloween? We're going to make a guess. Or what do you guess? Maybe it's someone that likes Frozen a lot. Her favorite movie is Frozen. What do you guess she's going to be for Halloween? Do you guess she's going to be Anna or Elsa? We're starting to once again move away from the concrete and use our language in an abstract manner. Before Halloween, when we're talking about this anticipation, we can really use those words for what we hope, what we wonder, what we think, what we guess. We're moving into this abstract zone. Now, when you do that, what you might want to do is provide visuals as a bridge. Because what the research indicates is that we don't move from contextualized speech, in which children are talking about the here and now, and then they're having a conversation about what's going down next month. There's these supports, there's these scaffolds. And the scaffold that I'm going to go to here is a lot of gestures and a lot of visuals. So when we're talking about Halloween, we're going to want to perhaps have like a big picture of all these cool costumes. And then we can ask questions like, what do you hope to be for Halloween? Or what do you think that this child's going to be for Halloween? Or what do you think Miss Kelly's going to be for Halloween? It's one of these pictures. So we're getting into this idea that this is not what it is. We're getting into this idea that we're thinking. Providing those visuals is going to give us the bridge so that we're just saying wah 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 wah, and the child has no idea what you're saying. The visuals give us a nice support. I love that a teacher I work with children with autism, she asks children every day what is their favorite. So if they have a shape of the week, for instance, once again, we're moving into decontextualized language. What is your favorite picture? And you might have a triangle, and you might have pizza over here, and you have all of these cool tortilla chip and all of these cool things. And the children with autism are showing this is what I like the best, like candy corn. And I like that because that's moving away from the decontextualized. If she didn't have this array for them to choose from, and she just said, what is your favorite triangle? It would just be like, wah, 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 wah. So providing that visual really provides a bridge into decontextualized thinking in which they're stating their opinion. So number two, what we want to do is we want to embed into the storytelling activities these higher level questioning. We're talking about inference. If you know the book Big Pumpkin, we are going to cover that in our SIS membership very soon. With Big Pumpkin, you have a huge pumpkin that we need to pull out of the ground so the witch can make the pumpkin pie. And it takes teamwork. So all the ghost, the monster, the vampire, the bat, everyone has to work together and pull each other in order to get the pumpkin, spoiler alert, out of the ground. The point is, there's a lot of high-level questions that we can have, and we can ask them in this decontextualized form by putting I wonder in front of it. So you might, for instance, say, I wonder if the bat's going to be able to pull the pumpkin out. Do you think the bat's going to be able to pull the pumpkin out? I wonder if everyone works together and they all work together if the pumpkin's going to come out. You're just stating it as an I wonder and putting it out there. They're looking at the book. The book has all the pictures. So it's not just you going, womp, 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 womp. You have this visual bridge, this scaffold, this support, and that we're not going from 0 to 100 where everything is visual and then nothing is visual when we're talking about decontextualized speech. We're moving into decontextualized speech with the visual. We have a story there. We can also ask some cause effect questions where we could say, what would happen if they don't get the pumpkin out? Then they're not going to have any, and they're going to think we're not going to have any pumpkin pie. Oh no. So you're giving those gestures. You have the storybook there. We're decontextualizing. We're talking about if the pumpkin doesn't come out, what's going to happen in the inferential thinking? There's not going to be any pumpkin pie. So we can also use those temporal markers, which I think are crucially important, which is why in our SIS membership, we use the temporal markers when we do articulation. We want these temporal markers to be automatic. We want them to be memorized so the children are easily able to organize their ideas and to tell stories, to tell things that happen, to talk about the future. So this first, next, then, lastly, so we can talk about the story. What happened first? First, the witch tried to do it. Then was she? No. Then the witch and the vampire. I can't remember who comes next. They was it? No. Next, the witch, the vampire. Then, and we can just keep doing next and then and next and then, and we're giving that visual and they're understanding the temporal relationship. So we're not going from, let's read the story, close the book, book the book away, and then say, what happened first? That's just too big of a leap for many of our preschoolers, especially if the children have autism and they're more likely to be visual processors. That visual will give them that bridge into the decontextualized language. They can do it. They can make that jump, but they need that visual bridge. Don't burn the bridge. Keep the bridge there, and the bridge can slowly be removed, faded out. The next one we have is leveraging role play. So I know in our Plain State groups, we always act out trick-or-treating. By acting it out in advance, they're knocking at the doors. They might not be wearing their costumes. They have the little paper bag. They say trick-or-treat, and then they say thank you. Then we can talk about when they go trick-or-treating. Are you going to go trick-or-treating to your neighbor's house? Are you going to walk up and down your street? Who are you going to go with? Are you going to go with your mommy or your daddy or your brother? So we get to act it out. And then we get to talk about, you're going to go trick-or-treating at your house. You're going to go. So we get to really bridge what trick-or-treating is. We're acting it out. Are you going to bring a bag for all your candy or are you going to carry a pumpkin? Oh, you're going to carry a bag. So we have these visuals because we have the props ourselves in acting out the trick-or-treating. Are you going to push the doorbell? Are you going to knock, knock, knock? So I'm using the gestures. I'm using the visuals. We're talking about what they're going to do on Saturday. I'm not burning that bridge. The bridge can be faded out at a later time. I am building decontextualized language skills. We are talking about the future. I'm using those gestures. I'm using those visuals. We're acting it out here. And then we're able to talk about what they're going to do when they go home with their mom and dad. Okay, after that, we're going to look at our last strategy, which is number 4. And number 4 is get clues from home about Halloween. So we have show and tell. And if you ask the parents, have your child bring something in from home about Halloween. So maybe it's going to be a piece from their costume, like a wand that they're going to use if they're a princess. Or maybe it's a Spider-Man's web shooter or a glove from Spider-Man to bring in a clue about Halloween and what they're going to do on Halloween. So maybe it's going to be some candy that they're going to hand out when trick-or-treaters come to their house, something souvenir from home. So once again, we have this prop, we have this visual, and we get to talk about, oh, you brought candy. Oh, what are you going to do with candy? Are you going to put it in the basket or are you going to say trick or treat? And we can talk about what we're going to do with the candy. Do you like this candy or that candy? And once again, we have these meaningful props from home. The parents sent something from home. So we're able to talk about that and make that bridge into what they're doing at their house in a meaningful manner. Besides the show and tell where they bring some Halloween artifact from home, you can also have the parent fill out what I'm going to do on Halloween. And you can write first, next, then lastly. That's all you're going to write. So maybe they're going to write first, and you can give them an example because they're like, what do you want here? First, I'm going to put on my costume. I'm going to be Elsa. And then you might say next, you say, we're going to take some pictures. Then we're going to go trick-or-treating. Lastly, we're going to go to sleep. So the parent writes out what they're going to do on Halloween. So they have a story. So then we can talk about the story at school. Once again, we know what the child's going to do on Halloween. So we can scaffold it with support, and we can give them gestures as we go through the story. The gestures I like to use is I like to go like this. F first, if you're watching this on YouTube, I like to touch my nose. Next, I have them stick their tongue out. Then, and then I like to go lastly with two L's. And really, the reason I do gestures with the first, next, then, lastly, is because I want to stop talking as soon as possible. I want them to be the teacher and tell the story themselves. They're not going to be able to do that if I'm always doing the talking. That'll be passive learning, where they're simply in the passenger seat echoing what I'm saying. So when I do that, and then I'm doing the gestures and I'm guiding them through the steps, then they're telling the story by themselves. And I get to say, you're the teacher, you're telling the story, and I'm the student, and really building that internal locus of control. So the clues from home, as I've said before, it can be a drawing, it can be a picture from home. They're going to have that visual, decontextualized language. What I'm emphasizing in Halloween is that Halloween is extremely engaging. It's extremely fun. It's very multisensory. You're going to be amazed at all of the creative ideas that are going to come out of you when you're working on decontextualized language with children. And with that, I want you to just take these strategies and remember two things. Gestures are your friends, and so are visuals. So when it comes to decontextualized speech, don't think of it as, let's talk about Halloween, and there's nothing there. Okay, that's too big of a jump for a child who's 100% talking about the here and now and what's concrete, what they can hear, see, now, perceive it their physically with their senses at this moment in time, and then go into conversational speech and talking about the future. So remember, visuals are your friends. Remember, gestures are your friends. And if you do that, you're going to be really great at developing decontextualized speech. Now, I think what is really important to remember with developing decontextualized speech is you want to get away from your verbal model as soon as possible. So you want to not be verbally modeling where they're echoing along with it, but you want to be using more gestures in which they are doing the words like because, and I put my lips together, because. So they're explaining or how we do something. So using those gestures and stopping talking in which they're telling the story as you're passing that baton on. You're not going to be able to pass that baton if you don't fade out the verbal. So as much as possible and as soon as possible, fade out your verbal models. Let the child unfold. Let the child share their ideas. Then you take those ideas that they share with them and you go ahead and recast them. You put them back to them in a grammatically correct manner, in a more complex manner. I like you taking their utterances and going for the gold and putting them into complex sentences. You really can't go wrong if you're modeling complex sentences with what they give you. So that's how you're doing it. You're not modeling decontextualized language like say blah, 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 blah. You're taking what they say. So they may say doggy. And you're saying, wow, when you go trick-or-treating, you're going to go with your dog. Right. So that's what you want to do. You want to take their responses and you want to turn them into complex sentences. And once again, it's that language being a container of thought. Complex language develops complex thinking. Challenge does create change. Well, I want you to take all of this information and have a blast with Halloween because it's a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to practice decontextualized language development. You're going to be amazed if you just focus on decontextualized language for the next month. Your time is going to be extremely well spent, and you're going to be amazed at how many wonderful educationally rich opportunities you have with this. Once again, make sure to download the free Google Slides deck. That's my gift to you. It's Halloween themed so that you can get the kids talking about Halloween, get them talking about the future, get them developing decontextualized language, and you have the visual support so that you have this bridge and you're not simply going from 0 to 100, you're going from 0 to maybe 25 to 50 to 75 and then 100. We're fading into that decontextualized language development. That's what's really neat about the research in decontextualized language development. There's research over the last 20 years, this has been a hot topic. But recently, they're more refining the topic and they're saying there's distances between the here and now language to getting into decontextualized conversation. And in that distance, there's a level of scaffolds, there's a level of support that is provided before we don't go from 0 to 100. There's support that is on every stage of decontextualized language development. It could be that this is something that's going to happen a second from now or just happened a second ago instead of a month from now or a month ago. This can be something, there's so many levels of distance that goes from contextual to decontextual, and just enjoy being in between and enjoy the process of providing the supports that develop them into decontextualized language users. All right, that said, do what you do best and roll up your sleeves and make the world a better place. One child at a time. You will always be first.